welcome everybody to Drew's second session on sound design for theatre. And I'm here, so I'm Amanda from Red Earth Theatre.
I'm Wendy from Red Earth Theatre.
And we're here to join everybody who's come to the session. And what I'm going to do now is just check that everybody has got themselves on mute, which is in the bottom left-hand corner of the of your screen. And can I just check that anybody who is under 18 has got a parent with them or an adult? That's fantastic. Great. Okay. So I'm going to pass you over to Drew. Now, Drew is a sound designer, and he did the sound design for our last show, Soon Child. And he's very, very skilled at what he does. And he's also a great technician. He knows everything that there is to know about theatre tech. So we're very, very pleased to have him here. So I'm going to unpin myself and pin Drew instead, if I can find my cursor. There we are. So, and Drew, thank you very much. And off you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so hopefully some of you out there have already watched my first session, and I spoke that then a little bit about what I kind of do as a sound designer, what my kind of job entails. I'm going to start off this session. We're going to talk a little bit more about this time about the kind of technology, about the equipment I use and the technology and things. So, well, firstly, when we design shows, it's not just the sounds we're thinking about, but it's not just, we're not just thinking about what we hear, but we're thinking about where sound kind of needs to come from. And it's as part of our job to decide where we put speakers around the theatre so that we can kind of locate sound in a certain space. So most theatres will have, if you go and you sit in the auditorium, you'll see you kind of left and right of the stage, you'll see the main kind of rig, which is where most of the sound will come from. But then we can also put speakers behind, we can put speakers on stage. And if I do a little screen share, first screen share of the day, here's a little example from a show I did a while ago. So can you all see this? Yeah, okay, good. So you'll see here, this is a view from the top of the stage. So this box here, this is our stage. You can see the front row of the auditorium here. That would be going back off the screen. And then all of these little red boxes are showing the speakers that are on stage. So I'm not showing the speakers that are out front for this because that changes depending on where this show traveled to. But you notice we have a pair of speakers downstage here, the bottom of the stage, and in the middle of the stage there's a pair, and up here on the top of the stage pointing down. So they allow us to locate sound to different places, so it sounds like it's the easiest way of getting something to sound like it's coming from upstage is to put a speaker there. But then you'll also notice there's a speaker here, and that's pointing off this way into the wing. And that's for one of the actors, because there was live singing during this show. That's so they could hear what was going on and they knew what they were singing to. So that's a little example of speakers. Let's stop that share, go into another share now. And this is how we program shows and how we play back our shows. So this is a program we use called QLab, and each one of these green boxes here is a cue in the show. So at a specific point in the show, we'll decide we want to make this sound, and we will trigger it at that point, and it will make that sound. So as a little example here, I've got this, which will play a low foreboding single note 2. And we can look down the bottom. This shows us our sound. So this down the bottom here is our sound. This is, if we play it, it would play along here like this, and this is the big bits is where it gets louder and it gets quieter as it gets smaller. And then if I move over to here, we then have control. So where we spoke about those speakers, each one of these different little fader sliders here allows us to push a different amount of sound to a different place. So this one might be our speaker that's on downstage on stage on the left hand side, and we can say I want it louder in there, I want it quieter in there, and it allows us to kind of really tailor how things sound, how the sound comes from different places. So let's just show you that. If I trigger that cue, you should hear a low foreboding note. And then this cue here, which we've called a fade out, so we can fade the sound as well, is going to fade the sound out. And that's essentially most of what we do are playing sounds and fading sounds. And there's a lot of other stuff we can, little bits and bobs we can do, but they're the two fundamental kind of things we use. Over on the right, you may have noticed as I was playing, it was showing which cues were kind of with these green boxes coming up, showing what cues were playing at the time. And this, I'll play through this little red sequence on the list here, and that will just give you an example of how busy shows can get and how complex things can get. So here we go. We'll start off with a little fridge hum in the background, then some underscore. Things are getting more complicated. We'll put a little sound effect on top of that. And then we're going to build the sound and then go into the next scene. And we're left with birdsong and a TV in the distance. So let's stop that. So that gives you an idea of how we kind of operate shows and things. And then moving on, the next thing I want to talk about is microphones. So I spoke a little bit about this last time. Another tool that we use is microphones. Obviously, we need to record things, but then also we can use them live. We need to use them on actors. We need to use them on musical instruments. So I'm just going to show you a few different microphones and talk to you about them. So this, you might recognize something like this. This is a microphone here, and you'd speak into it like this. This is the sort of thing, you'll recognize this from things like recording studios. If you ever see footage from places like that, usually someone's singing into it. And this bit on the front is to stop the wind from your voice getting through to the mic. Because if you make a P sounds, puh, 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 and you put your hand in front of your face, you'll notice you produce a lot of air when you do that. And if you blow on a microphone, it makes a not very nice sound. So this allows the sound of our voice to get through without the wind getting through. So we're not going to make that noise, that horrible noise. These are all very well and good for when you want to get a really nice detailed recording of someone's voice. But obviously if we're doing live on stage, if someone's singing live on stage, you don't want something this big, this clunky. You can't carry it around. So people tend to opt for something like this. So you probably all recognize this from watching bands or something similar. It's portable. It's admittedly, and I'll own up to this, I don't own one of these. This for some reason is a rubber one. So they're not as bendy as this. They're usually made of metal. But yeah, a lot more robust. There's a kind of that kind of filter built into there. So the popping is reduced because it's built into this shield that's on the outside. And then moving on, if we look at a microphone like this, so these kind of microphones, and the one I showed you before, they pick up sound from all the way kind of round here. You have to be quite close to them as well. So from here, they're not going to pick up sound as well as from here. This is where they're kind of designed to listen from. So, you know, quite a wide area they listen to. Whereas a microphone like this picks up mainly from sound that comes from this direction. Kind of, if you imagine a cone coming out from the end, it's quite a narrow cone that it picks up. So it means you can point it at a sound source and you can isolate and listen to mainly that without getting too many background sounds. And you'll see people in TV use these. You'll see people hold them on the end of a long boom, and because you don't want to see a microphone in the scene that you're filming, they'll hold them out of shot in the camera and they'll point them at the actors they want to hear, allowing them to focus but keep microphones out of the scene, not have anything visible. They also come with something like this, which is a wind shield. You put that on, and if it's a windy day, it stops. Again, you don't have the voice problem because we're not close to the mic, but you might have wind blowing, so it stops that noise getting into the mic. And if it's very windy, and you'll probably recognize these, you have something like that, and that stops heavier wind. So these are fine when you don't want to see a mic, but ideally we want to get as close to the voice as possible to get the best sound, and the best, just that sound. You want to get as close as possible. So we also have things like these. So this is a little lapel mic, and you'll notice these from TV as well. So if you watch the news, if you watch anything kind of live shows, you'll see people wear them on their lapels. And it means you can get close to the person speaking and pick up sound as good, as much of just them as possible without picking up anything else. So just that tiny little bit on the end is a microphone. That is just the cable that would then connect to a little wireless transmitter, and it would send their voice back to the sound operator, who can then hear that. And then if we go to stage, so we use very similar things on stage, but this is another version of that. We have things like this. So you'll notice this is a kind of beige skin tone. They make them like this so that we can, because when we have microphones on stage, we want to be as discreet as possible most of the time. So this allows us to mount them into people's hair. You usually see them on people's head like that. It means you can get close to the voice so that we can get as good a sound of the actor as possible. Or you might see people wear them over their ears, or you might see them on little metal booms that come around their face and hold them close to their mouth. And yeah, it's just another way of getting closer to the voice, but keeping it discreet, because we can't use big mics on stage, and we need to be able to get close to the actor to hear them. Okay, so microphones, so that kind of finishes microphones. There's thousands and thousands of different versions of microphones, and they all work in different ways, do slightly different jobs. There's no set way to use one, although so things like this tend to be used for vocals, and these tend to be used for vocal on stage. Sometimes people use them for instruments, and then there are things like this, which is just another variation, which would most of the time would be used on something like an instrument. Okay, so now that we've spoken a bit about that, let's go on to our image. So we've changed our image from last time, from our book of The Red Tree. I've got it here, but let's do a screen share for you. So, are you seeing that? Is it coming up nice and big? Good. So, our image this time is sometimes you just don't know what you are supposed to do. And so let's look at the image together, and let's talk through, like last time, we're going to talk through what kind of sounds we think might be in this image together. And then we'll have a little task that we won't try and find sounds from the image, but we'll take influence from it, I think. So we've got our little girl here, and she's on this stage, and there are all these bowler hats around here looking at her. Everybody's looking at her. Everyone on stage behind her is looking at her. So it feels like there's kind of a lot of pressure on her. There's this person in the chair playing a trumpet. So obviously that's a sound we might want to think about. And there's this weird kind of chicken cage thing squawking angrily at her from behind. So that might be another sound. And these little candles, they feel like little marching candles, don't they? That could be a little sound as well. And then moving over to the other side, there is this thing here, person here, with the wind-up box at the bottom. So maybe there's something mechanical about this wind-up box. But then if we go up, we see coming out of the trumpet on the top of their head, there's all these kind of weird, which look like twisted musical notes, don't they? So I would think that this is some kind of music box person. And maybe there's like the sound of a wind-up organ, that kind of sound or something coming from that. And then with all these our people around here, because it's got that kind of feeling of pressure on her, on our little girl, maybe there's a sound of muttering, a sound of murmuring from our people down there. So that's our image. And I think for me, because of all these things going on, all these sounds it feels like there's kind of a cacophony of sound in the background. It would be quite a noisy scene. So I think, let's come back to me. I think as a little task, if you've got the time and if you want to, and it would be really fun to try and find 3 sounds that you could put together to make your own cacophony of sound. And they can be anything, but I'm going to give you a little tip of one thing you can do, and I'm going to give you a little proviso as well. Firstly, I'm going to talk about frequencies. So we'll come back to our task in a minute. Frequencies. When we think about sound, when you think about sounds, they come in, there's the volume of the sound, so how loud it is, but there's also the frequency of a sound. And to kind of explain that, so sounds come, so there can be high frequency sounds down to low frequency sounds. So everything high frequency sounds like a mosquito makes, or bird song, anything that's really kind of shrill and kind of, well, high. I don't know a better word to explain it, if that makes sense. And then your low sounds are those kind of low rumbly sounds. So sounds like thunder, and sounds like a truck going past. You hear that kind of low rumble as it goes. And then everything in between, your kind of middle sound, mid-range sounds. So voices fall a lot into kind of mid-range sounds. So I think of the 3 sounds that we're going to find, I think we want to find ideally find one high frequency sound, one middle frequency sound, and one low frequency sound. And we spoke last time about if you know, the easiest way to do this, there's phone apps available to record things. Most of them are built into phones already. That's a really good way to go out and record things. And also, if you want to, we can play around with some Foley work. So sometimes, I'll explain what that is now. Sometimes when there's a sound that's difficult to source, because it's a difficult thing to go out and record, because it might not be the right time of year for snow or something, or you want to get a very specific version of something, we can fake our own sound effects. You see this a lot in film and things. You see people in radio plays, things like that, people with boots in trays of gravel so they can make the sound of somebody walking up the drive. So, and let me give you some examples here. I went out and did some examples for you the other day. So here's 3, and you can already see what they are. You should be sharing the screen. So I had a little play around just to give you some inspiration. So here is a little example, and I think this sounds like rain on a window. So if it's like really, if you imagine being stuck inside and you mix this with kind of other sounds of wind and the outside, it's got that feeling of rain scattering against the window. So this was sesame seeds on my cooker top. And then another example, this is quite a well-known one, this to some people. If you take corn flour or custard powder and put it into a tea towel, you can create the sound of somebody walking in the snow. I have to apologise for my terrible technique, it could be better, but it gives you an idea of that kind of walking in the snow sound. That's enough of that. And then as I was cleaning up yesterday, I noticed that with the tea towel with still a bit of corn flour left in it, I was able to make the kind of sound of ropes. If you imagine a boat, we did our boat example last week. If you imagine that sound of the ropes kind of stretching and things, I did this. And that's our ropes stretching sound effect. So let's stop sharing there. So that's some options. That's some, just to give you some inspiration. The kitchen is a really good place to start for making your own sounds. But if you want to, so we're going to try and find 3 sounds, something high, something middle, something low, to create our cacophony. And if you've got the option to try an experiment and do some Foley work, that would be brilliant. And then also, I've got one other thing. I think we should record our own voiceover for this piece, because we've got our script already. Our script is here. Sometimes you just don't know what you are supposed to do. So that can be our script. And I think it'd be great to do a recording, but with a twist, because it would be boring just recording our voices. That's really easy. I think find a way to make your voice sound different. You'll notice that even if I take a cup and I speak into the cup, it affects the way your voice sounds. And for example, if you take a wheelie bin and you empty it out and speak into that, it's going to make it echoey. It's going to add something to your voice. Or you could speak down a drain pipe or something. So I've got a little example for you here of my voice that I recorded yesterday. This was me speaking into an empty metal galvanized garden bin that I had yesterday. So this is my example. Sometimes you just don't know what you're supposed to do. I apologize for the terrible acting. So that's an option. So go away, have a play, speak into different things, see how you can get your voice to sound different. You could talk into the top of a piano and hear how it affects the strings and the piano and things. Anything that kind of adds an interesting sound to your voice. And those are the 2 tasks. Go away, have a play, see what you can do. And if you want to send any of them in to us, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I will hand back to Amanda.
Thank you so much, Drew. That was really fascinating. And we were both going, oh yeah, that does sound like snow on walking on snow.
It helps if I tell you what they are at first, because I tried it with Kat yesterday and I said, what do you think this sounds like? And she said, well, it sounds like somebody pouring sesame seeds onto a cooktop. I did do it with quinoa first and then realised that would be far too middle class, so I find an alternative.
That's brilliant. Well, yeah, so before we say goodbye to people who've attended, I think it would be really lovely just to remind people that we are trying to collect anything that comes out of your work from these sessions. So if you do go away and make a soundscape that's to do with the idea of that lovely image from Sean Tan, then do send it to us. We got a special email address, so it's calmandcreative@redearththeatre.com. I'll say that again. It's calmandcreative@redearththeatre.com. So if you've got anything to send us, any sound files or any images or any videos that you've got of you creating different folies, is it folies?
Foley, yeah.
Foley. How do you spell it?
Foley.
Foley. I thought you did, but yeah. So any folies, then we'd love to see them. So all we have to do now is to wish that you go well and stay safe.